about Midas Touch's very own Ron Filipkowski joining us. Ron, I hope you had a great holiday weekend. How are you?
Yeah, it was okay. Went and saw the Mission Impossible movie because we had rain here in Maine, but
Mm-hmm.
finally got some good weather.
Yes, well, that's nice to hear. I hope you enjoyed yourself, Ron, and thank
Thank
you
you.
for your service, by the way. When you see this tweet that I just read from
Yeah.
Donald Trump talking about Vladimir Putin, and we'll get to some of the other comments he made over the weekend, but when you see this tweet that he put out earlier today, what goes through your mind and what is your reaction to it?
I mean, I've literally read like every single social media post Donald Trump has made for like 8 years and watched all the interviews, watched every rally speech, because that's what I do. And it's very, very rare that he could put anything out that surprises me or shocks me, like his vile Memorial Day post, or his which is very similar to his Easter post, his Christmas post. They're always disgusting and inappropriate. So that stuff doesn't surprise me. Most doesn't surprise me, but this one surprised me because this is literally like him saying the quiet part out loud. This is the Jack Nicholson, "A Few Good Men, You Can't Handle the Truth, I Ordered the Code Red" moment for Donald Trump, where, for the first time, he really says, like, there's a lot that I could have done. And, he's basically saying there's a lot that the Europeans wanted me to do, the Ukrainians want to do, Republicans in Congress wanted me to do, that I could have done, but I haven't. I've held it back because I have such a good relationship with Putin and he's always been my friend. But, you put that with the tweet that he made 2 days ago and the statement he made 2 days ago where he said he doesn't understand what happened to Putin. They used to have such a great relationship, but now he doesn't listen to him anymore. And he just doesn't know what happened. So you put these two things together and you clearly can see that what Trump believed, and this coincides also with his prediction that he would end it in 24 hours, right? Was that Putin was his friend. Putin was his pal. And that as soon as he became president, he would just call him up and everything would be fine and this war would be over. And of course, it shows what a bumbling idiot and a fool that Donald Trump is, that here we are now, May 27th, and he's putting out a tweet going, "Man, I've been so good to Vladimir. I've done so much for him and he's not doing anything for me." It's just pathetic.
Completely pathetic. And he made some more comments over the weekend, basically making it sound like what happened to Vladimir Putin? He's always wanted peace. We've always had a great relationship. And every single time he says Putin wants peace, there's another airstrike, more innocent women and children are murdered, literally hours after he makes these statements. And now all of a sudden he's thinking to himself, geez, maybe Vladimir Putin played me. Maybe he doesn't want peace, Ron.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only person on planet Earth who believes that Putin wanted peace. I mean, even the Russians don't think that Vladimir Putin wants peace.
Right.
Even Vladimir Putin says he doesn't want peace. I mean, what else do you need to know? Like, oh, he wants peace, sure, if he can have all of Ukraine and, along with lots of other things that he wants as well. Sure, then he'll want peace, but for how long? For a month? And then who's next? Estonia, Lithuania, Poland? I mean, that would only embolden him. Everybody knows this. Anybody who's ever cracked open a history book or watched the History Channel knows that you don't handle people like Putin by appeasing them and giving in to their wants and desires when they wage wars of aggression. And it's not just, everybody points at Germany, but there's thousands of examples throughout human history where that is the case. So
Right.
Donald Trump, by the way, who doesn't read, who doesn't know history and is largely illiterate, but thankfully he was able to have, his dad pay off a doctor to get him out of Vietnam, and then his dad to pay somebody to take his SATs so he could transfer into Wharton. But, the guy is a moron. He's literally a moron. And not only that, he appoints as his special envoy to Russia, Steve Witkoff, who has never served in government, never been a diplomat, never served in the military. He's a real estate investor from New York City.
Right.
And he has been to Moscow 4 times. He has never brought anyone from the State Department with him. Where's Marco Rubio? Marco Rubio is not part of any of this, and he's the Secretary of State. In fact, his Witkoff shows up in the Kremlin. He doesn't even have his own interpreter, so he's got to use a Kremlin interpreter. I mean, this has been a fiasco from day one.
And Ron, I'm wondering, somebody like you who served, I mean, we all take his statements personally, but on Memorial Day, when he's talking about a speech that he's going to be making at a cemetery, and then he Truth Social tweets it out and says, enjoy. Isn't this a day, Ron, where we're supposed to mourn and remember those who lost their lives, who have served this country, and all the widows and all the people out there that have lost loved ones? And Donald Trump is telling people to enjoy, to get ready for his speech at a cemetery. What do you make of that?
Because he's a malignant narcissist. I mean, it should be obvious to anybody. Unfortunately, it's not obvious to tens of millions of Americans who, you know, despite the fact that they get hit upside the head with a brick millions of times, they still don't get it. But everything is about him. He literally makes every event, whether it's a funeral or anything, about him. So when he talks about when he puts out his message saying, I'm going to go to Arlington to honor the people there. I mean, he's not making it about them. He doesn't talk about them. He doesn't talk about their side. He says, tune in to watch me give a speech and enjoy it. He says, enjoy it. Enjoy. I mean, if anybody's ever walked through Arlington, and me, yes, I went there as a young Marine, and I went there, took my kids there after many years later. It's such a powerful experience. You can hardly talk. Yeah. I mean, especially as a vet, you know, who had people who died that served along with you. You can hardly speak when you walk the ground. So for him to say, enjoy my speech, and then I watched it, and then you could see, like, you could tell that he's got this script, and you could tell that he has been warned and told by his people not to go off script like he does in his rallies, because that's when he says the obnoxious shit. They had this carefully crafted speech for him, and there was one time where he started to go off script and talk about Biden or, you know, trade policy or something. There was like a brief moment of about 30 seconds, and Asen, who does our clips, was like texting me like, here he goes, and you know, and my ears pricked up. And then he stopped and he said, no. He caught himself. He said, no. I've got to just stick with the speech here. I promised that I wouldn't do any ad lib remarks. And so, you know, like, he was told, no matter what you do, don't talk about yourself. And he still almost did it.
Yeah. It's just, it's sickening. Speaking of talking about yourself, but let's talk a little bit about his commencement speech that he made over the weekend. I believe it was at West. I'm trying to remember exactly where this commencement speech was. Yeah. West Point, correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there are some weird moments in this speech, but one that comes to my mind, Ron, is when he's talking about trophy wives. This is a commencement speech, and he goes into some weird diatribe about trophy wives. And by the way, I think most people would say he's had quite a few of those himself. What do you make of that? What are these weird rants? Can you imagine if like a Joe Biden did something like that at a commencement speech? What did you make of this speech in general, and the gaffes and the weird comments that he made?
Well, I think that is exactly why he was warned at Arlington not to go off script, because they had a speech written for him for West Point, which was largely a foreign policy speech and a speech talking about military recruitment and the Golden Dome and things like that. But yet he continuously went off script and talked about crazy, bizarre shit over and over again. And so what became the headlines? You know, what became the story, at least for Midas and a few other publications, was the trophy wife stuff. I mean, not for the New York Times or I think it was ABC or CBS, one of the two, washed his speech and glossed over all of that stuff, the crazy stuff. But we didn't, because as we say often, our motto is we cover the crazy. Where mainstream media ignores the crazy, we cover the crazy. We show it to you in all its glory. So yeah, I mean, you're thinking about all these cadets and they're graduating and they're 22 years old. And some of these are some of the smartest, most patriotic people that are all great athletes, because you also have to be a great athlete to go through a service academy. If you've never been there, you see what these guys go through, men and women. It's just unbelievable. And so these are the best and the brightest. And yeah, he's up there talking about, oh, I had a rich friend, real estate, and he tried to retire, because he was talking about why he wouldn't retire, why he hasn't retired in his 70s. And he talked about his friend who was a rich real estate guy, and he retired, and then he was bored, so he went and got a trophy wife, and that ended in a bad divorce. This is what he's saying to these graduates, along with a lot of other insane things.
Just absolutely ridiculous. And correct me if I'm wrong before we move on here. Isn't it true, Ron, that Donald Trump playing golf again over the weekend and on vacation and on taxpayer dollar playing some more golf?
Yeah, he played golf Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And he was the first president to leave the speech without shaking hands of the graduates. Biden shook hands of all 1,000 graduates. It's right around 1,000, like 1,100. Obama did the same thing, stayed after, shook the hand of every single graduate. Because look, they've gone through 4 years to get to this point. And these are the future leaders of the country, of the U.S. military and the country. And so, yeah, you owe him at least that, as the commander in chief, I think, But of course, what does Trump say? Trump says at the end, I'd like to stay and shake your hands. What he says. He says, I've got to go deal with some pressing issues about China and Russia. That's what he told them, why he couldn't shake their hands. And then he went straight to the golf course. And he has nothing on his schedule today. Today's supposed to be the first day back at work for most Americans. Nothing on his schedule. We can't find any public events, nothing that he's doing. And we're pretty sure he's on the golf course today for day 4 in a row. And we're working right now on our sources to try and get some video of him out there today.
Yeah, and this was the guy who complained every day about all the golf that Barack Obama played. Meanwhile, Donald Trump played more golf in 4 years than Obama played in 8. Ron, I want to ask you, I have to ask you at least one question about cosplay Kristi Noem. There's a picture circulating online. I think you posted it on your X account as well. She's on a camel dressed in her outfit. What do you make of this, another cosplay moment for Kristi Noem?
So I see her over there in Israel over the weekend, and I'm like, what is she doing? And she's the Homeland Security.
Right.
Like, why is she in Israel? And then she gave some bullshit reason. And then she's like in Qatar on a camel, riding through the desert. And then she's out on like a boat somewhere over there with camouflage on it, with the IDF, with the Israeli Defense Force. Not in a boat. She's in like a military vehicle, but all camoed out. And it's just like, what is she? And then, so while she's doing that, by the way, RFK is down in Argentina, celebrating the fact that they are following us out of the World Health Organization. So, we have these cabinet secretaries, they don't know their agencies. They don't know their jobs. They have no clue what they're doing. And so they're just flying around the world doing all these photo ops, having the time of their life. And we're paying for all of it. I have no idea what she's doing over there. The only thing I can think of is she was mocked and shamed so much, including on Fox News by Laura Ingraham and including Megyn Kelly, who were trashing her for all of her stunts. So maybe she went over there thinking maybe she could get away with it over there. And by the way, the DHS headquarters in DC has big blown up photographs of her in her outfits all over the building now.
Just absolutely embarrassing. It's like a Saturday Night Live skit, Ron. Speaking of Saturday Night Live skits, it almost appears as though, let's talk a little bit about Sheriff Scott Jenkins, who just got a pardon. You want to talk about the definition of corruption, and Donald Trump is defending him and his family when he was already found guilty in a court of law. What do you make about this pardon?
So, yeah, today was the day he was supposed to go to prison for 10 years. He's a sheriff in a rural county in Virginia, and he was selling badges to businessmen. Basically, it was all these like rich businessmen in these small towns in his county that wanted to drive and break down lanes. They wanted to run red lights. They wanted to park in handicapped spaces. They wanted to flash badges to get out of speeding tickets when they were in other states driving around. They whip out their badge and they don't get a ticket. So they were paying this guy thousands of dollars for these they were actually real law enforcement badges. And so finally the FBI got wind of this and they did a little sting and they sent an FBI undercover agent in there and bribed him and got a badge and busted him. It went to trial. He was convicted. He had no remorse. He got sentenced to 10. He took in over 75 grand for these badges. And he's also a MAGA Republican Trump supporter. So, the day he's supposed to turn himself in, Ed Martin, who was the DC U.S. attorney who could not get confirmed by the Senate because he was so wacky, who's now in charge of pardons, gave him a pardon, recommended him for a pardon, and Trump pardoned him. No reason for the pardon whatsoever. Just, literally every Republican elected official who has ever been convicted of fraud or bribery in the last 10 years has already been pardoned by Trump, with the exception of George Santos, who has a turn-in date in 60 days. So stay tuned because he might be next.
Yeah, and I've talked to George on and off the air, and I do believe he will eventually get a pardon, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there.
I'll just tell you a footnote on that. I think the only reason why he hasn't is because a lot of the people that George scammed were big Trump donors.
I've talked to George about that off the air. He disagrees, but I have asked him.
Well, of course he disagrees, but if you talk to Elise Stefanik, she doesn't disagree with that. She hates George Santos, and I think that she's also blocking his pardon.
Before I ask you one more question, Ron, it's interesting you bring this up because if you remember the Michelle Fiore story, this was the MAGA Republican in Nevada, correct, who got a pardon. And it was our own.
That's another one. That's right.
But here's what's interesting about this, Ron, because our own Republican governor, Joe Lombardo, said in a courtroom in the trial that he was a victim. He donated to this fund for police officers for 2 fallen officers in a statue. He said in a courtroom he was the victim. And then Trump still gives her a pardon. And then our Republican governor doesn't say anything about it, doesn't criticize Donald Trump. Absolutely insane, Ron. Absolutely insane. Before I let you go, I did want to ask you a little bit about this. So Donald Trump said today he's threatening to withhold federal funds from the state of California over a transgender athlete's participation in an upcoming sporting event. I was asked about this on Piers Morgan a number of times. I've done their show. And I always say this isn't a top 5 issue. It's not a top 10 issue. Yet here they are again talking about transgender athletes. What are there, like 13 or 14 of them in all of Division I sports? Yet Donald Trump is talking about withholding funds today. What do you make of this story?
It's, for a long time, my position on this was it's really up to the sports leagues to decide eligibility requirements for their athletes. But I've really kind of changed my mind about this, especially after the 2024 election and talking to Martina Navratilova, who I know, and, the fact that I've coached my daughters and youth sports and stuff, and reflecting back on that, and and how Trump used it during the campaign. Look, he spent by far the most money on ads on one issue, and that was migrant crime, right? That's where he spent the vast majority of money on ads. But people don't even realize this. Number 2 was this issue, was trans athletes. And as you said, there's only like a couple of dozen throughout the whole United States, but they spent literally like tens of millions of dollars on ads on this issue. And the reason why they do it is because most polls show it's an 80-20 issue where 80% of the country is dead set against it. And I understand their position. And like you take somebody like Martina, who's a progressive liberal Democrat, who is with the Democrats on every issue, who thinks that Democrats are absolutely insane on this issue. And so, and I think she makes a lot of good points, and she's approaching it from the perspective of women's rights. It's like women spend all these years training and private coaches and working hard and getting to this level. And, it means a lot to them.
Sure.
And to then be defeated by someone who was competing as a male 2 years before is a hard pill to swallow for them, for their coaches and their parents and their families. So I get it. And so I just think that although the behavior by and the comments by Republicans has been reprehensible about this issue, it's a losing issue politically for Democrats, and they're just going to have to. I think they're just going to have to move on from it and and just say no, we can't do this. Now, I think that they should be fully able to participate in recreational sporting events or anything like that. They want to run in the Boston Marathon, that's fine. But what I'm talking about are the competitive things where college and Olympic level stuff.
Yep. And I agree with Martina Navratilova. I've interviewed her as well, and I'm on her side on this one. And I agree with you. I agree with everything you just said. My issue is people like Riley Gaines. Nobody would know who Riley Gaines was.
They weaponize it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Gaines has made millions of dollars making speeches and going after transgenders in sports, but yet Donald Trump, liable sexual abuser, Donald Trump attacking women on looks, Donald Trump not giving women the right to choose, even women that are raped or the victim of incest. You'll never hear Riley Gaines complain about that, but she'll talk about transgender athletes in women's sports. And I just think these people are sick, Ron. They're sick.
Not only that, let me tell you about something else that Don Jr. is cooking up. I don't know if you heard about this, but he is coming out. He has a business venture that he's doing with some other guys called the Performance and Enhancing Drug Olympics. Have you heard about this?
No.
Where they're going to do a series of this is big. Junior is hyping this. They're going to do a series of athletic contests where there's no rules about drugs. You can take whatever steroids, growth hormone, whatever you want, and you're going to be able to compete in these sporting events. And what he thinks is that this is going to blow away regular sporting events because people are going to see these enhanced athletes doing these amazing things like running 100-yard dashes and shattering world records. And they're going to find that a lot more interesting. So it's basically like no rules. You can take whatever drugs you want, competition. And this is one of his business ventures. So it's kind of surprising for them to be doing that at the same time they're complaining about trans athletes, Well,
but, allegedly, I would say if there's anybody that knew a thing or two about how drugs cannot enhance your performance, it would probably be Don Jr. And I guess we'll leave it at that. But that I did not hear about that, Ron. I'll have to look a little bit more into
Look it up. It's real.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll do very, very well. And I'm sure a lot of people in Donald Trump's family will be playing in some of those events as well. But anyway, Ron, always a pleasure, my friend. Glad to hear you had a good weekend. Let you get back to work. Always appreciate the time. We'll catch you next week. Okay.
Okay. We'll see you.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate you. There you go, everybody. Ron Filipkowski from Midas Touch. They are the best.